Today's subject requires us to do a bit of math. You see, since January of 2019, you and I have driven 5 Porsche 992s. We started down here at 443 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque. We drove both a coupe and a convertible with a PDK, then we drove a convertible with a manual transmission. At that point, we upgraded to this, 640 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque. Again, we drove a coupe and a convertible, any transmission you wanted, as long as it was a PDK. Now, since then, they have introduced another variant here. We will drive that shortly. Now I'd like to direct you to these numbers here, 379 horsepower and 331 pound-feet of torque. Don't want to alarm you here, however, these numbers are less than all of these numbers. That means 3 things. Number 1, this is the most basic 992 on offer. Number 2, this is the most affordable 992 on offer. And number 3, after we get through the exercise of driving this thing today, you will see it has nothing to do with any of this math. So with that, presenting the most basic 992 Carrera. Back in a simpler time when the most basic 911s didn't have turbochargers, it was very easy for Porsche to differentiate output by differentiating displacement. This is something different entirely because it's the same 3-liter flat 6 with 2 turbochargers strapped to it. So how do they change the output? Well, it has a lot to do with the turbochargers. You see, the boost pressure changes, it's lower. And then more importantly, the size of the turbochargers, they change. For example, the turbine wheel, 45 millimeters, the compressor wheel, 49 millimeters. Now, if this was a Carrera S, those numbers would be 48 and 55 respectively. Everything else stays pretty much the same, like an 8-speed PDK, or the fact that the car is on offer in 2 or all-wheel drive. This one, for the avoidance of doubt, is 2-wheel drive. Another number that is usually very important to our discussions on this road is weight. Here, not so much. The weight differential between a Carrera and a Carrera S, 28 pounds. With that, it's definitely not slow, and this is normal mode, but you do notice a difference of, I want to say, the sharpness off the line. There's a little bit of delay in the way it delivers power, not so much from a standing start. Here's a really good example. I'm going into a turn. I haven't powered into the turn. I want to power out of the turn. Here I go. There's a delay. Is it huge? If you've never driven a Porsche before, you're like, oh my God, this is a fast car. But coming from a Carrera S, you would notice a difference, and it would be that delay. You and I need to tend to 2 other aspects. One, there is no difference from the Carrera S, and the other, there's a sizable difference from the Carrera S. First is the fuel economy, not a topic you and I discuss a lot when we're driving Porsches. However, at 18, 24, 20 combined, that is exactly the same as the Carrera S with more output. And then there are the brakes. There is a difference here, and it's the diameter of the steel rotors. So all the way around on this, 330 mils as opposed to 350 on a Carrera S. Right about now, I really would have loved for this car to have been equipped with bright yellow seat belts. With that, here we go. And brake. Oh, you'd be super pedantic to say this is a lesser brake. Let's anyway do it again. And brake. Yeah, the pedal modulation is good. It doesn't pull from side to side. It doesn't change the braking characteristics that we've come to know and love in a 992. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game of mine, the options game, with today's contestant, another 992. However, this one is sort of special, and one of the big reasons it is special is the manufacturer's suggested retail price of $97,400. Not to be Captain Obvious here, but that is considerably below $100,000. To that, we add Racing Yellow for $0. Now, a note about the yellow. This is the second yellow 992 I have had. The first one, Santa Maria Madre de Dios, had the yellow seatbelts. This one sadly does not. However, the color is kind of growing on me. Normally, I am not into yellow cars, but the black trim and the smoke lenses really make the color pop. However, I could never pull the trigger because I've got this recurring nightmare about yellow cars where I'd order one, I get very excited about it, pick it up from the dealer, and then invariably in like 2 weeks, I'd roll into my garage, see the yellow car, and say, oh my God, I bought a yellow car. Anyway, pressing on, leather interior in black, $4,530. There goes the 100 grand. sport exhaust system with tailpipes in silver, $2,950. Then a note about the wheels. The most basic 992s, they are fitted with 19s in the front, 20s in the back. However, this one has been upgraded to the Carrera S wheels, 20s in the front, 21s in the back, $1,790. I will say they look wunderbar. To that we add seat ventilation, $840. Lane change assist, $1,060. Don't think that would be something I would want when I'm trying to go for the lower price car. Sport chrono package, very important in these cars, $2,720. Then the adaptive sport seats, the 18-way seats with memory, $3,470. And then, believe it or not, those are the only options fitted to this car. Yes, very short round of the game. Just have to add the delivery, processing, and handling fee for $1,350 for a total price of $116,110. Now, I do need to point out, every other 992 we have had in any round of the game has been high 140s and well above that. As with any other 992, there are differing drive modes. You and I have been doing this thus far in normal. Let's switch to sport. And this is not so much to get more acceleration. Yeah, you get a little bit more acceleration because the throttle mapping changes. And this is the difference. You notice the transmission mapping has changed as well. And it's only when you go into Sport or Sport Plus where you're like, oh, this drives closer to that Carrera S. And if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, the transmission mapping seems to be different between a PDK and the Carrera S and this Carrera. And you only notice it when you go back down into normal mode. So if I'm gonna go into normal mode here and accelerate, you feel that delay. And I don't think it's just the torque or the horsepower alone. I do think it's a change in the combination of maybe the throttle mapping and the transmission mapping. Thus far, if you are keeping a scorecard of the differences between this and a Carrera S, I would argue it's way less about the output and more about how that output works in conjunction with the tuning of this PDK as we just experienced. That said, we're at the point where I need to share some bad news with you. There are certain options, specifically performance options, that are not on offer, even if you write an extra check. The first is the PDCC. The second is the rear axle steer, and that's a big deal for these things because it transforms the car. The third is PASM. Now, PASM itself is fitted as standard, so the adjustable dampers. What you can't get is the PASM Sport suspension, which rides 10 mils lower. And then, the one that's going to hurt us the most. There is no manual transmission on offer. I tried, I called Zuffenhausen, even had Kumo call Zuffenhausen. Nothing, no manual transmission. And then there's Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus. We've experienced that on pretty much every 992 we have driven, even the one on the track. And there, you really got to push the thing to its limits to really understand the differences there. But here, it's kind of like a mixed bag. This two-wheel drive car we are driving, can't get it. Not even if you write an extra check. Now, all of that does open up a tangible difference here, and you would only notice it having driven 5 992s back to back to back that all have the PASM Sport suspension that rides lower. This car, you immediately notice a difference. You think, oh, what is that? It's not really flex or lack of control over pitch, squat, dive, and roll. What you notice is a little bit more compliance in the suspension, a little bit more movement in the body of the car because the center of gravity is just a wee bit higher than in the PASM Sport cars. I would argue here it's more of a ride quality preference thing than a power and torque thing. Remember the 718 Spider you and I drove about a month ago? Well, in my 11 years of presenting on the show, I have never received so many direct messages, comments, emails, asking the exact same question. Hey man, would you get that car or this car? And when I say this car, this very one right here, the most basic 992. And if you think about it, an incredibly valid question because the way that car was equipped was around 105,000 US, and we have learned this can be easily had for 105,000 US or less. And my answer may present the challenge for most. I'm just too focused on my Dave Ramsey cheapskate ways that I would be like a laser on the resale value. And that car, technically a GT product, is not limited run like a GT3. However, they do limit the amount they make, which will have a positive impact on the resale value. So if you spend it 100 here or 100 there, you're more likely to get more of your 100 back with that one than this one. But no matter how great of a 718 Spider it is, it's still a Boxster and will not scratch the 992 itch. And for me, a 992 is a Targa with a manual, or better yet, a GT3 Touring. But those are orders of magnitude more expensive than this, yet this, it absolutely delivers exactly what a 992 should, and does so very well. And this is where we get back to the math. It's all about the way these things are configured. This one, it's got, what, $8,000 in interior options. It's got the lane change assist option, things you don't need. To me, it would be a cool basic color, a cool basic interior. I would probably do Sport Chrono and absolutely do a sunroof. And then I would implore Achim, please give us the manual transmission. And it's not because I'm a manual transmission freak or I'm trying to do the math. This one, it's about the weight. Because if you look at the Carrera S, the manual transmission there saves 90 pounds. Even though it's the same price, it saves 90 pounds. So it moves this whole equation away from math, as I told you at the beginning of this episode, and makes it all about bragging rights, which would turn this into, at around 3,200 pounds with a manual transmission, the lightest 992 on offer.